Okay. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's council meeting. I do apologise for the delay. We did have a slight technical hiccup, but we will start tonight's meeting. Firstly, council would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands, waters and skies, and the Wadawurrung people. We acknowledge and respect their continuing connections to the lands, waters, skies, culture, and the contribution they make to life and the spirit of our community. We pay respect to their past and present elders and their emerging leaders, and extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. So thank you very much. And again, apologise for the delay with the start. Mr. CEO, we seem to have everyone present. We do have an apology from Councillor Salter.
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor.
Any other apologies?
Not from any officers.
No. Thank you very much. Item 3, pecuniary interest and conflict of interest disclosures. Councillors, do you have any conflicts?
No.
No, thank you. I'll just let you know that I do have 2 conflicts of interest, as you know, in the past. So item 15.2, which is the planning scheme amendment, C33 for Nelson Road, and also item 220/04661 to 75 Murray Road. Mr. CEO, any conflicts from officers?
No conflicts from officers, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. We have no, item 4, we have no leave of absence of councillors. Public question time, item 5.1, no public questions outstanding. 5.2, public questions. Councillors, we have 2 public questions tonight. The first public question is from Carmen Bell, and I will read the question out for everyone. My question relates to page 32 of the agenda for council meeting 28th of July 2021, specifically to the planning application number 2021/067, description of the proposal for 5 Beach Street, Queenscliff states demolition of a dwelling, outbuilding and fences, construction of a dwelling and fences, and variation to the site coverage requirements of Design and Development Overlay Schedule 6. It admits that this property is within Heritage Overlay 1, Fisherman's Flat, which is significant. Is this an inadvertent omission or deliberate to allow a building of such dimensions to progress through the planning process of the borough? Carmen, thank you very much for your question. It certainly is an inadvertent omission, and that omission will be corrected. So thank you very much for your question. Public question 2 is from the QCA. The question asks, the new and latest survey on the tourist parks informs the community that the tourist parks generate income that helps us keep rates low. This presumes ratepayers are responsible for Crown land management and contributing financially to its maintenance and upkeep. Can it be clearly explained by the Mayor how our rates would be higher if it was not supplemented by Crown land incomes, or whether our rates are kept at lower rates, having kept these tourist parks financially viable? That's from the QCA, presuming from David Connolly. David, we're going to take that question on notice, and we will respond in writing. That will form part of the next month's agenda. So there are 2 public questions. We move on to item 6, councillors, the confirmation of the council minutes. 6.1, ordinary meeting of council. Councillors, there is a recommendation that there be confirmed as an accurate record. Can I just get someone to move that? So move Councillor Grout and seconded Councillor Hewitt. All those in favour? So moved. Thank you very much. Councillors, item 7, record assembly of councillors. The list is there before you. The recommendation that the record of assembly of councillors as presented in adjunct to item 7 be noted. Can I get someone to move that? Councillor Hewitt and seconded Councillor Grigau. Thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Item 8, notice on motion. 8.1, notice on motion status update. We have no motions on notice outstanding. 8.2, there are no notices of motion received. 9 petitions and letters. There were none received. Councillors, we move to item 10, functions attended. There is a list there of how busy everyone's been working, which is good to see. There is a recommendation there, councillors. So, Councillor Hewitt, yes.
Can I also add that I attended the MAV sexual harassment training on the 23rd of June 2021, and also the G21 environment pillar meeting on the 19th of July 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hewitt. Any other, Councillor Grant?
So I also attended the Plonk meeting with Councillors Evels and Salter on the 24th of June.
24th of June, yep. Thank you. Any other additions or changes, councillors? If not, can I get someone move Councillor Hewitt, seconded Councillor Grigau? Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So moved. Item 11, Chief Executive Officer. Chief Executive Officer report. I will hand over to our CEO, Mr. Gill. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think I'll table the report as read and happy to take any questions that the councillors might have.
Thank you, councillors. Councillors, there's a recommendation there that receives the CEO report for July 2021. Someone move Councillor Hewitt, seconded Councillor Grigau. Thank you. Any discussion or questions for the CEO? Councillor Grant?
Yeah, Mr. CEO, I just want to ask a question about the implementation of the new structure for council operations, the new staff structure. If you could just clarify for us the reasons for changing the structure and secondly, how the implementation is going.
Thank you for your question. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your question, Councillor Grout. The reasons for the restructure, there's a number of reasons. One is we really wanted to make sure that the structure reflected the strategic direction that council has set us through both the council plan and also the new council as it's coming to start to make some decisions about how he wants to run the council. There's also, I guess, recognition that there was probably a need to make sure that that we had a structure in place that dealt with the things that are important to the community. So we just needed to make some adjustments to reflect that through surveys and through responses that the community really wanted us to focus on certain aspects of the operations that maybe we had some gaps in. So we've done that. The restructure formally commenced on the 1st of July, and we're working through the process to engage the managers, the 4 managers, which one of those positions will be a director's position. We have 2 of those resolved, and we're working to resolve the other 2. And then from that, the rest of the changes will flow with the input of that new management team.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, any other questions? Or Councillor Hewitt?
Thank you, Mr. CEO. In relation to the draft Bellarine Peninsula Statement of Planning Policy, which is a terrific initiative from the state government, I just wanted to check with you, Mr. CEO, if we've got timing for when that will actually, likely timing for when that will actually come into force, and the impact it will have on our planning framework and the decisions we make as the relevant authority there. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hewitt, for that question. With regard to the timing, the intention is to have that completed by the end of this year by the state government. It will depend, of course, on the responses they get through submissions, but they've generally met their timeframes. What it means for us is a couple of things. One is that there'll be a change to our planning scheme to include the state policy. And from that, there'll be work that we'll need to do to make sure that our local policy reflects both the state and picks up on the key policy direction that's in that statement of policy. So there'll be I suspect a two-step process. One will be that the state makes a change, and then we will go through the process with councillors in the community to adjust and amend our planning scheme to reflect that policy position.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Mr. CEO, I was just going to ask just back to the restructure. I think it's congratulations, I guess, on taking the opportunity with the resignation of Philip Carruthers to have a look at how this restructure could take place. So you said you got 2 positions in place. Any idea when timing you'd have following 2 positions?
There's a recruitment process that we need to go through. So that can take anywhere between 4 to 6 weeks from this point. So look, I'm hoping that it will be the shorter of the 2. But in the meantime, we're certainly, but it's business as usual. It's because of the way the organisers set up at the moment. The loss of Philip obviously is impacting people, but we're not falling behind on things. So, but we will keep moving to try and get everything in place as soon as possible. Yeah.
And I presume there was a fair bit of consultation with current staff, and did you have to run through the unions, or were they involved in this process?
Yeah, so consultation with staff commenced January, February this year. So we went through an informal consultation process in which we took ideas and feedback from the staff about what opportunities there may be to restructure. Then we went through the formal consultation process, which included notifying the union and giving the staff the opportunity to formally object or comment on the proposed restructure. And so we completed that all in the last week of June, which was fantastic, and the staff have been very supportive of the proposals we're trying to make and are working with me to implement the restructure.
Excellent, well done. Councillor Grout, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I've got a further question, Mr. Mayor, of the CEO, and this is about erosion. So the community has for some time had concerns, particularly about erosion at the what is known as the Dog Beach, and I just wonder if you can update us where we're at in terms of the conversations that we're having with the with DELP, the relevant department, on that erosion.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Grant, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for future reference, Councillor Grant, I'd recommend this question comes as a question without notice at the end of the meeting, because it's not a matter it's been dealt with.
Not contained in this report.
Yeah. So, but I'm happy to address it now. Look, we have over the last few years been involved in a project to quantify the amount of erosion at the Dog Beach, and that's been run by DELP and has involved some geotechnical studies and some, I guess, visual research into the erosion at Dog Beach. That study's been completed and confirms that there is erosion beyond the normal cycle that you would expect in terms of sand movement and replenishment, and so there is an issue at the Dog Beach. That report will be used to try and find other funding opportunities within DELP and state government to actually take some action now. We've contacted DELP again recently to remind them that was the commitment, but also that to remind them that this winter in particular has seen further erosion, and that the councillors have raised concerns with me, at least, about the fact that there may be some safety issues with that. So we have now, I've just been informed, we've now organised and actually got a meeting to discuss that. So thank you, Johan, for that information. But yeah, we've got confirmation that they'll meet with us again in the next fortnight.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. CEO. Councillor Gregory, a question in regard to the CEO report.
Yes, just regarding the restructure, I understand that change is always difficult in any all organisations. Are we setting up any support programs to help with any staff that's struggling with the change?
Yeah, it's an excellent question, Councillor Gregory. So right through the process, we've offered support and opportunities for people to speak about concerns, and we continue to do that. So we have a employee assistance program, which we've encouraged people to reach out to. And we've also made sure that staff could come and speak to us confidentially one-on-one if they did have some concerns. Thankfully, a few staff have taken up that opportunity. We've been able to talk through concerns that they may have, and in particular, what it means for them as we make these changes. So, but it's something we're very mindful of, and we're trying to keep track of. Yes.
No, good, because I understand that it's like staff is, for any organisation or business, is the most important valued asset of the organisation. So it's good that you'll be looking after the staff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions in regard to the CEO report? No, so we do have a mover and a second. Please, someone sorry, we'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. And thank you very much, Martin, for your report. Item 12, community wellbeing, 12.1 proposed bike park project investigation framework. Mr. CEO, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick introduction. This is a follow-up report that comes out of the resolution that Council made earlier this year in March to bring to you a proposal for investigating the potential for a bike park, and in particular in a location potentially around the existing skate park. So what we've done in this report is just present an investigation framework, and I'm certainly happy to take any questions, and especially if, about what that means and what we potentially will do next.
Okay, thanks, Mr. CEO. Councillor, could someone move the?
I will, thank you.
Councillor Gregory, seconded. Councillor Hewitt. Councillors, do we have some questions for the CEO? Councillor Hewitt.
Thanks, Mr. CEO, and thanks for the work that you and the team have done in relation to this investigation. I just wanted to confirm two items. Firstly, that the costs with respect to satisfying the conditions set out by the department will fall within that 20,000 allocated in the current budget for the bike park. And I also just wanted to confirm that we will await satisfaction of those conditions and confirmation that DELP's happy for us to use the skate park area before we commence the concept plan discussions with the community. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for those questions, Councillor Hewitt. Certainly at the moment, the work that we're doing falls within the budget that we've been provided by Council. And to your second question, yes, we'll step it out very deliberately to make sure that we get clear direction both from DELP and that we can present to the community that there is some support to do something at this site before we start the concept design process. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gregory, you've got a question?
Yes, just regarding item 8 in the appendix regarding this issue, roughly what dollar sum would we be seeking for this advocacy plan regarding to approach sort of the government or the opposition to fund this project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gregory. I wish I could give you an accurate figure at this point, but I can't. But it will depend a lot on the design and what sort of materials we use for a bike park. But it would be reasonable to say that you're looking at a figure between 100,000 and 250,000 for a facility of the scale that I'm anticipating it will be. So we'd be going, if we got that far through the process, we'd be going to the government with a figure in that range.
Thank you very much. Any further questions, councillors? If not, we do have a mover and, oh, sorry, Councillor Grant.
Yeah, just to follow up with that, on that indicative pricing, that assumes that the amenities block on that site will be adequate as is.
So no, it doesn't. It assumes that there may be some need to upgrade that. And again, without speculating too far into the future, it depending on what type of upgrade the community and council request, it'll depend on how much money we need to invest in that. So if we're talking about a replacement toilet, for instance, then my 250,000 is very conservative, and we're probably talking closer to 500 to 600,000.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any further questions, councillors? No, I'll get someone to, sorry, we've moved and seconded. All those in favour, accepting the report? Thank you. And thank you very much, Mr. CEO. We move to item 13, local economy. There's no reports to consider. Item 14, environmental sustainability. We will introduce the Special Projects Officer, Stuart Hanson, who is on screen. Thanks, Stuart. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and councillors. The purpose of this report is to inform council of the current status of the waste collection services contract and seek council's approval to exercise the option to extend the agreement. Council resolved to award the waste collection services contract at a special meeting of council held on 13 April in 2016. The contract was awarded to Four Seasons Waste for an initial period of 5 years. That initial period is due to expire in July this year. The scope of the services provided under this agreement includes the collection of all residential curbside garbage, recyclable material and garden organics bins, the collection of the public place and the public recycling bins, collection of bins at council offices and the council managed caravan parks, and also the provision of the annual hard waste collection from residential properties. The contract also includes provision of bins to new service addresses and replacement of damaged and lost bins, and that's based on the scheduled rates within the contract. The contract includes an optional extension period of 2 years, and the officer recommendation detailed on page 21 of the agenda is to exercise the option to extend this contract for the 2-year period. The recommendation has been made with consideration to the contractor's performance of the contract over the initial 5-year period. Also opportunities that have been identified to collaborate with other councils to provide the waste collection services post July 2023, and council's curbside transition plan, which is required under the state's circular economy policy. The officer recommendation is that council exercise its option to extend contract 2015-11 waste collection services by 2 years to 7 July 2023, and request the CEO to inform Four Seasons Waste of council's decision and action the 2-year extension option in accordance with the provisions of the contract.
Sorry, councillors, do we have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation? Move Councillor Hewitt, seconded Councillor Grout. Thank you. Do we have some questions or discussion in regard to this? Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. I just wanted to say great work, and what I'm really pleased about in particular is us looking at ways that we can think broader and implement some really cost efficient mechanisms. So hopefully we can, as you've identified, collaborate with other councils in order to secure a new contractor at what would otherwise have been lower rates than we would be able to contract by ourselves. So thanks for thinking large and thinking about collaborating, and really impressed with the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Councillors, any other questions? No, if not, I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's so moved. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stuart. Well done.
Thanks.
Councillors, we'll move on to item 15, planning and heritage. 15.1, planning permit activity report. I will ask Dinah O'Brien to make herself available, please. Thank you, Dinah. Welcome.
Good evening, councillors. If I can point you in the direction of page 26 of this evening's agenda, which is the Planning and Heritage Planning Permit Activity Report Summary. So the purpose of this report is to present a record of planning permit activity in the Borough of Queenscliff. As you're aware, it's done in every council agenda. So the following table provides a summary of the planning permit activity during the last month. So we have a current application load of 14. Since the last report to council, we've finalised 12 applications for planning permits. We've received 16 new applications since the last report, which gives us a total number of 28 active applications. We have 5 VCAT hearings scheduled, so decisions awaiting review by VCAT. And we've got 1 development plan, planning scheme amendment summary report. So councillors, if I could point you to the officer recommendation, which is that the planning permit activity report be received. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dinah. Councillors, can I get a mover and a second that the planning permit activity report be received? Let's move on.
Also move.
Councillor Grout and seconded by Councillor Hewitt. Any discussion? If not, I will I'll put that to the vote to accept that recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. That's moved.
Mr. Mayor, can I move a follow-up motion?
Yeah, you can, Councillor Grout.
So I'd like to move that council receive briefings on the following applications because of community interest. So this 2021/053, which is 2/22 Bellarine Highway, Queenscliff. That is all.
Okay. Thank you. So can I get someone to second that motion? Councillor Grigau, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. So moved. We now move to item 15.2, Planning Scheme Amendment C33 and Planning Permit Application 2018-07981 Nelson Road, Queenscliff. As I mentioned at the start of the meeting, I do have a conflict of interest in regards to this decision. I think it's been sitting here for a couple of years, so I'm quite happy that it's come to a decision. Our planning leader, program planning leader, Bryden King, will run through it. I will step down from the chair and I will ask Councillor Hewitt to take the chair, and I'll ask Connor to remove me from the meeting for the time being. Don't forget to bring me back, Connor.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Okay, introducing Mr. Bryden King, if you'd like to run us through your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. The report today is about Amendment C33 to 81 Nelson Road in Queenscliff. It's a site that's got a range of mixed zones on it at the moment, and the proposal is to rezone that land and also with a combined planning permit allow for a 7-lot subdivision on the land. So there's a mix of zonings on the land at the moment, including a redundant public use zone. And the amendment seeks to confirm the land as residential land through a neighbourhood residential zone with a design and development overlay 3 on it to control the built form outcomes. There is a combined planning permit with the amendment that seeks to allow the land to be subdivided into 7 lots with a common property access, which would come off Nelson Road. The proposal is a planning scheme amendment under the Planning Environment Act. The final decision maker for the matter is the Minister for Planning, but Council has a specific role to form a view on the amendment and the combined planning permit through the report presented tonight and its subsequent decision. The processing of the amendment and the permit's been through public exhibition and referral to a number of state government agencies. That did generate 1 submission from the public, and through some negotiation and further discussion, that submission was withdrawn, and there were two more technical based submissions from the EPA and the CFA about the amendment and the rezoning. They've both been resolved via conditions being included in the draft permit, which is presented in attachment 2. And one of those matters also relies on, in regard to the CFA submission, the maintenance of a fire break on the land at 61 to 75 Murray Road that council currently owns, until that land is developed to manage broader issues of fire risk identified by the CFA. So on the basis of that processing, there's no outstanding submissions to the amendment, and it's able to form, the council is now able to form a view on that amendment. The recommendation in the report suggests the amendment has met all the relevant criteria under the Planning Environment Act and delivers a positive outcome for that land to have a consolidated set of zoning and to facilitate a 7-lot subdivision accordingly. So I'd take you to the recommendation on page 36, which seeks to confirm that position about the positive nature of the amendment and forward it on to the Minister for Planning for final approval. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Bryden. We have a recommendation there, Councillor Grout and Councillor Gregao, on page 36. Do we have a mover for that? Thank you, Councillor Grout. And seconder, thank you, Councillor Gregao. Now that it is on the table, Councillor Grout, Councillor Gregao, do you have any questions or discussion?
No.
No, I have some questions. Thank you, Bryden. Just in relation to the fire break that's going to be on our land, council's land, who will be paying for the maintenance of that fire break, and what will happen? And presumably, once we look to develop our parcel of land, that fire break will be no longer necessary as a result.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hewitt. And the intent is that there's a 19-metre fire break on that land. Most of that land is against that common boundary is grass, for want of a better term. So the management of it is quite a straightforward thing in that sense. And the opportunity, the cost of sort of setting that up through agreements and so on is to be borne by the developer of the subject land, 81 Nelson Road. There may be further detailed discussions about that, how that ongoing maintenance is costed and distributed. But once that land is underway with development at 61 to 75 Murray Road, which the current condition refers to, if I can take you to, well, I can read from it that it's suggesting that as that land's up to 50% developed, then the fire break's no longer needed. So yes, there's clarity. The intention is that there's clarity around how that's managed over time, and it's not an ongoing burden forever.
Great, thank you, Bryden. I also have a further question. The information provided refers to some assessments done in respect of some acid sulfates, particularly a coffee environmental assessment statement. Are you able just to elaborate on the proposed protective measures and who in particular will be managing compliance?
So the intent of those conditions is to do a more thorough assessment about managing that risk of acid sulfate soil before any of that more in-depth construction occurs with the yellow machines and so on. So that is normally done through expert reports, which the condition's asking for. Obviously the level of expertise to analyse those is not necessarily always available in every council, and we'd potentially draw on the expertise of people from the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning to help us assess reports of that nature and make sure that they're meeting the relevant obligations around those criteria and standards.
Yep, great. Thank you. Any more questions, Councillor Grout, Councillor Gregor? Councillor Gregor? No, okay. I think that was
Yeah, I'll just make
sorry.
just like to make a comment, Madam Mayor. If actually no, I don't know what your title is. Adam Chairperson. Councillor Hewitt.
Councillor Hewitt.
Acting
Councillor
Chair.
Hewitt.
Acting Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to thank the planners for persevering with this, because we've seen the building currently on that site sit there disused for a long period of time. It's been subject to a fair bit of vandalism, and I think the result is going to be an improvement for us in the borough. So thanks for persevering with this one.
Thanks, Councillor Grout. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Okay, I think we'll take this one to the vote now. All those in favour? So moved. Now that we have moved that and addressed that item, Mr. Parker, will you allow the Mayor to please return? Thank you, Bryden. Great. Welcome back, Mr. Mayor. Back over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. I'm sure you did a great job. Okay, so we now move on to item 15.3, the planning permit application 2021-024 69 Stoke Street, Queenscliff. And we'll bring back our program leader for planning, Bryden King, again. Thanks, Bryden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Just I'll try and do a brief introduction on this matter related to the report for the development of a dwelling at 69 Stoke Street in Queenscliff. The proposal relates to the development of a two-storey dwelling on the land. The land's positioned, zoned the neighbourhood residential zone with a significant landscape overlay and a design and development overlay, and the permit triggers for the planning permit relate to the significant landscape overlay and the design and development overlay. And it's about the buildings and works that happen on the site. So the subject land's an interesting site on the corner of Bethune, Stokes and Nankervis Street, has an area of 959 square metres, and it's proposed to build a new dwelling on the site that would be 2 stories and located to the eastern side of the site and step down the site towards Nankervis Parade. Originally, the proposal as lodged had a large 4.8 metre high wall positioned right on to Bethune Street and had a site coverage up around 44%. Amended plans were received in June and they removed the wall to Bethune Street and had a 2 metre setback for the dwelling from Bethune Street with some landscaping features, and also reduced the site coverage down to 38%. So the proposal has been through a public notification process and generated significant interest from the community in the range of 9 objections, who had concerns about the form and scale of the building, particularly on the first set of plans, and the impacts it might have on views from the public realm across to Swan Bay as a result of the development. So the report has gone through those objections and detailed responses to those on page 49 to 51 of the agenda, and analysed those to the point where the amended plans are considered to have responded to those relevant planning controls and some of the concerns that have been raised earlier in the objections. The proposal, I should also mention, does seek to take vehicle access from Nankervis Parade via a double garage that's accessed via a new crossing from Nankervis Parade in that location on the western side. So the report comes to the conclusion that the proposal is responsive to the significant landscape overlay and the design and development overlay via the amended plans, and subject to a series of conditions that seeks for some further refinement and some landscaping outcomes on the site. And on page 45 is the recommendation, which includes a number of those conditions to try and finesse some of those elements. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Councillors, so we can have a discussion. Can I get someone move the, yep, let's move Councillor Grout. Seconded by Councillor Grigor. Thank you. Questions to the planner or comments? Councillor Hewitt. Yep.
Thank you, Brian, for all your work and Dinah's work on this. I really appreciate it. As part of the concerns, one component which you've touched on is the proposed entry and exit into the property onto Nankervis Parade, and as to whether that was safe. I understand that you've considered this together with the engineers and have proposed some conditions to the permit to address this issue. I was wondering if you would kindly run through the consideration of that safety component and what suggestions are being made in order to address the issue. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Hewitt. It's in terms of the analysis that has occurred, the movement of a vehicle out onto Nankervis Parade has been analysed. Our engineers have been out on site and looked at that issue physically and in detail, and also in terms of the plans that have been submitted. The conditions and the recommendation at the moment include a recommendation of trying to make that crossover work as much as possible to allow to be positioned and a width to allow the vehicles to move out from the garage, have good sight lines through the trimming of vegetation along Nankervis Parade, and ensuring that vehicles will be able to safely exit in that location. The general view is that with those changes and the recommendations in the permit, you'll be able to have reasonable sight lines for that manoeuvre to occur, and that should be able to happen in a controlled environment in that sense.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Hewitt? Yep.
Yeah, thanks for that, Brian. This might be a question for Mr. Gill or Mr. Rajaratnam, just in respect of the upcoming traffic management study. I just would like confirmation that will include Nankervis Parade. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, the upcoming study is an investigation of the entire network in Queenscliff, and we can certainly anticipating that Nankervis King Street investigated. What we will do is make sure that when we brief the successful consultant, that we bring these issues to their attention and ask them to pay attention to them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, some further questions? Councillor Grout.
I'd just like to make a comment here, Mr. Mayor. I think councillors have been looking at this proposal for some weeks now, and over that time, we've seen quite a few changes to this proposal. So I really wanted to say on behalf of other councillors how we really do appreciate the contribution of some of the local residents, as well as the work of the planners. We've engaged with the applicant and really have made some significant improvements, we believe, to the original proposal, so that far better meets the precinct characteristics here and the objectives laid out in our planning scheme. So thank you very much, everybody, for getting involved with this.
Thank you, Councillor Grout. Councillor Grigor, any questions? No. So, Brian, just a couple of quick ones in regard to the vehicular crossing. It says that to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. I was just wondering, who is the responsible authority?
That is the council and its organisation, and
Okay,
that would be in consultation with the council's engineers primarily. Okay.
The other question, just you mentioned the wall on Bethute Street. I think it was 4.8 metres originally. So is it still 4.8 metres, just been set back, or has it actually been removed?
Yeah, the actual wall that was 4.8 metres sitting on the boundary to Bethune Street is is gone completely.
Completely. Yep.
There was always the main wall of the building, and then there was another wall coming out to Bethune Street. The other wall to Bethune Street is gone completely now. Okay,
perfect. Excellent. That's what I wanted to clarify. And can I just welcome Councillor Salter? Thank you for joining us, Councillor. We are at item 15.3. So we do have a mover and a seconder. Put that to vote. All those in favour? So Councillor Salter, I can't see a hand there at all. Oh, in favour? Sorry, you're on mute, Councillor Salter.
I'm not voting for this because I have great concerns about what's going to happen in Nankervis Parade.
So you're voting against, Councillor Salter? Sorry.
Yes, I am.
Sorry, I couldn't see your hand, so I just wanted the confirmation. So I might just ask for that vote again. So those in favour and against? Thank you very much. So moved. We move on.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, was that called for a division or?
No, it wasn't.
Thank you.
No. We move now to item 16, governance and performance, review of council policies. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, and Mr. Mayor, and this is one of the bad things about Philip leaving is that you get to hear from me a little bit more. So this is a review of two policies that are important guidance for council as they make decisions about financial matters and also matters to do with our assets and how we manage those. Look, I think the critical thing to say is that we have workshopped these proposed changes with the council, and we've also presented them to our independent audit committee. And so the next step now is for council to formally consider them. And I'm happy to take any questions about the policies themselves.
Okay. Can I get someone move the recommendation that we have there on page 58? So move Councillor Grigale, thank you. Seconded Councillor Salter, thank you. Welcome again, Councillor Salter. Any questions for the CEO or comments? We have Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say in respect of CPO 11, investment of available funds, the revisions are really welcomed in terms of mitigating our financial risk by capping our investments in respect of particular rated authorities or authorised investment deposit taking agencies, or the language there. So I'm just really impressed by looking at that and the risks, the steps we're taking to minimise risk in that respect. So thanks to Gihan and all those involved. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hewitt. Any other questions or comments, councillors? If we have no more discussion, we do have a move and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. So passed. Thank you. So the next item is 16.2 community satisfaction survey results. I will ask our communications manager, Connor Parker, to join us. Welcome, Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So one of the benefits of the timing of introducing this report is that you've had a lockdown to consider the 99-page community satisfaction survey, which is being tabled as Appendix 6 today. I don't propose to go through the entirety of the report, but I will touch on some highlights from the report. So for those of you who are familiar, the Community Satisfaction Survey is something that Council participates in every single year. Most councils in Victoria take part. It's coordinated by the Victorian Government. The Community Satisfaction Survey, or the CSS for short, involves 400 residents and ratepayers from the Borough of Queenscliff being randomly called and polled on their thoughts about how Council is performing in general, as well as in specific areas of policy and performance. Those results are then tabulated and compared against other councils, statewide averages, and our own previous performance, and that forms the Community Satisfaction Survey. So there's a lot of individual data there, but overall the report has generally been good news for council's performance over the past 12 months. Most areas of the report have either showed stable scores or increased scores on last year, both in the general scores and in those individual performance scores, which is good news for community perceptions of our performance. So we saw stable or improved scores in every core metric except one, and stable or improved scores in almost all of those service areas. 13 service area metrics outperformed the statewide average by 3 index points or more, which is above that margin of error, which is a strong result for council. While most of the report is good news, there are 2 metrics where council's performance has either notably fallen or underperformed. So I'll draw your attention to those. The first is the core metric of overall council direction, which refers to community perceptions as to the direction council is travelling in. Is the direction of council's performance improving? Is it getting worse? Is it getting better? That metric has fallen by 7 index points this year, though I would note that the score is higher than our 5-year average and could be something of a correction. So we saw an 18-point rise last year, and it's then come down 7 points this year. So obviously one for us to watch, but if you look at historical trends, it looks like it may be a correction rather than a substantial change in expectations of performance, especially given the overall metrics in every other category have either stayed the same or increased. So one to watch, not one to panic about yet. In terms of those individual service areas, there is one service area metric, which is enforcement of local laws, which did fall against last year's performance and is 5 points lower than the statewide average. So that's a metric which has now underperformed the state average for 4 years in a row. So it may be something for us to pay greater attention to. When considering the results of the CSS, it's useful to consider that while it can give us really good insight into general trends, it's not so good at giving us insider detail into why people answered the way they did. So it has some value, but certainly it's something that we consider alongside all the other ways we collect feedback from people. So whether those are consultations, whether those are inquiries we get from the public, and certainly to any members of the public who read the report, who are watching today, the CSS is a great way for you to share your feedback with us, but please feel free to share feedback with council at any time. Any feedback that we get is valuable feedback, including in the form of the CSS or including a phone call or an email or any other way you get in touch with us. So the recommendation is down the bottom of, well, it's actually split over 2 pages, page 63 and 64, to note the results of the report and thank those members of our community who did take the time to share their feedback with us. It is a fairly extensive phone interview, so we do want to thank those members of the public who did take the time to share their feedback with us. Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Connor. Councillor, the recommendation is there. Do I have someone to move the recommendation? Councillor Grigor, thank you. And seconded, Councillor Hewitt, thank you. Any discussion, councillors? Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you, Mr. Parker, and thanks for all the council officers who have been involved in this really important process. I'd just like to reiterate the second part of the recommendation there and thank those community members who engage with us, not only as part of our various engagement processes on particular issues, but through emails, through phoning, and including as part of this, you're giving up your valuable time and to participate in the feedback is so important for how council operates. So thank you again. And I'd just like to say, as Mr. Parker said that, overall it's great news. So I'd like to congratulate Mr. CEO and his and the whole team on that. It's a really wonderful reflection of all the hard work that you put into the organisation and into the community. So a heartfelt thanks. We all really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hewitt. Any other councillors like to make comment or question? Councillor Grout.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Parker, for that report. I just have a sort of rather open question, really. Just if you can indicate what sort of actions council takes to address issues that show up in a survey like this as being either trending down or scoring on the low side.
It's a very good question. So we use the report in a range of ways. One of the things that we do is we brief all our staff at an all staff meeting on the results of the community satisfaction survey. So we share with them the report, much as we have shared with you today, and give them some insights into those trends. Often how individual program areas will use this is they'll be able to reflect on things they've done in the past year that might have resulted in a significant change, either up or down. So if they've seen a significant improvement, they might be able to connect that to some work they've done and consider, oh, this is an opportunity for me to really continue to expand on or grow on what I've done there. For those program areas, thankfully, rare, who see a dip in performance, it's an opportunity for us to consider why that's happened and address it. As an example, last year's community satisfaction survey showed a drop in performance for town planning and some of those planning metrics. So we ended up having a bit of a chat with our planning team about, are there ways that we can improve the way we communicate on planning? And the planning team was able to consider some of those changes. And you'll notice that in this year's report, that trend has reversed. So they've gone back to the state average. So it's something that we use in a range of different ways, but it's certainly very useful, not just for councillors, but for individual staff and program areas. And we do consider those results each year and throughout the year as opportunities for us to improve our own performance.
Thank you, Connor. Sorry, Johan, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to mention that officers or council, the organisation, will be taking a little bit of a review of the local law space. There's been quite a lot of feedback from the community on certain hot topics, I guess you could say, and it's usually quite a vexed space. So we'll be approaching you in the coming month or so, I'd say, to discuss how we might be able to improve performance and talk a little bit more about KPIs for the local laws team, which will hopefully change some of the trends that are occurring.
Thanks, Johan. Councillor Grigor, you've got a question?
Just asking, so you're saying for next year's report, they'll be moving to a more regular surveying throughout the year. So will they report it after they do those surveys, or so they'll get periodical reports, or will there still just be a one annual report at the end of once a year?
It's a great, I thank you for that question, Councillor Grigor, because it is a point that I should have touched on earlier. The provider will be moving to calling throughout the year. Previously, they've called just in around February, March, and then they've given a report. They'll still deliver the report only once a year. So the report itself and the reporting and the way that happens will be the same going forward. But residents and ratepayers will be receiving calls throughout the year. In fact, they've already been receiving calls for next year's report. Part of the benefit of this is it means that we get a more accurate snapshot of performance throughout the entire year rather than just in February and March. So it's a bit more accurate in terms of averaging those out. It also allows the supplier to make sure they're getting a representative sample. They do their very best to get a representative sample every single report, but it allows them, for example, if they're calling through the first half of the year and they notice that they don't have enough people under the age of 40, for example, they have 6 months to try and address that balance. So the reporting will still be annually, but the calls will be made throughout the year. We've put some notes up in Facebook, in mayor's columns, etc., to just alert people that they may be receiving these calls. And certainly to anyone watching, if you are receiving a call from National Field Services asking for your feedback on the borough, please let us know. That's what that call is.
Thanks, Connor. Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions, councillors? No, if there's no further questions, I'll just add that congratulate the CEO and the team for the overall performance. I think it's great to keep trending upward, but it's also important, like most reports, it's, there's always some work to be done and there's opportunities for us to improve. So congratulations and thank you for an excellent report too, Connor. That's fabulous. So councillors, we do have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. All those in favour? Thank you. So moved. Thank you. We now move to item 16.3, appointment of a council representative to the Association of Bayside Municipalities. I'll hand over to Mr. Rajarat now. Thank you, Johan. And you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on the pronunciation of my surname. Well done. Point to you. Council, the report's fairly straightforward. We're providing you an opportunity to appoint a councillor and a councillor representative, as well as a substitute to the Association of Bayside Municipalities. You might recall that late in November, the 19th of November, you actually appointed the CEO or his delegate to participate in the ABM. However, the ABM has advised us that this doesn't enable the Borough of Queenscliff to participate in the voting processes. So we've had to table this report to allow you to appoint 2 councillor representatives. The role of the ABM has been fairly beneficial from officers' point of view. It's basically to act as an advocate for Port Phillip, facilitate collaboration, as it's stated in the report, across councils, and grow and share resources and capability. The recommendation council's on page 70. I'm looking forward to working with whoever council decide to appoint onto the committee, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rajaratnam. Councillors, do we have a recommendation there? Councillor Grigor?
I'd just like to move a motion to nominate Councillor Hewitt as the Association of Bayside Municipalities and Councillor Grout as the alternate councillor representative.
Thank you. And then points 2 and 3 as
So
presented.
2 and 3 as recommended by the officer.
Okay. So that's moved by Councillor Grigor. Can I get a seconder for that one? Thank you, Councillor Salter. Any discussion, councillors, or questions for Mr. Rajaratnam?
It's a bit of a winning day for Councillor Hewitt. You know, like someone from her former school got a gold medal in Japan today.
Okay, thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Mr. Rajaratnam. We will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. We do now move to item 16.4, instruments of appointment and authorisations for the EPE Environment Protection Act 2017. Mr. CEO, Mr. Gill, easy name.
Yes, no, well pronounced. Mr. Mayor. As discussed at a recent council workshop, this is a result of some changes to the relevant legislation for the EPA, and it just makes sure that when incidents are occurring, that the officers have the appropriate delegation to deal with those incidents in time, and that they're effectively council's delegating that power down from themselves to the officers. So I'm happy to take questions on the report, and yeah.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So the report is there. Can I get someone to move the report? Councillor Hewitt, thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Grout. Any questions for the CEO? If we have no questions, thank you very much. I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you very much. So carried. We move to item 17, authorisation of signing and sealing of documents. There are no reports to consider. Questions without notice. Questions without notice status update. There are no questions without notice outstanding. Questions without notice, councillors? Any questions without notice? No. I did have one, but it was asked earlier, so I will let that one go. Councillors and members of the public, list of council meetings. So our next planning review, if required, is on the 11th of August, and the next full council meeting is on Wednesday, the 25th of August. Item 20, closed session of meeting. In accordance with section 66(1) and 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020, the meeting will be closed to members of the public for the consideration of the following confidential items. Those items being 20.1, confirmation of the 23rd of June 2021 confidential council minutes, and 20.2, community grants 2021-2022. Can I get someone move that we move into a closed session? Councillor Grout, thank you. And I get a seconder, Councillor Salter, thank you. Councillor Grout, you wanted to say something? before?
Yeah, I just want to, not quite sure how to, well, I know what I want to do. I just want to thank the committee. So this, we're going into a confidential session, but in this public part of the meeting, I wanted to thank all the members of our Grants Advisory Reference Committee for the integrity and the diligence they showed in helping assess and then allocate grants for this year, community grants for this year.
Well said, Councillor Grant. I think everyone concerned would be echo your sentiments exactly. So we do have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you. So move. We'll just wait for Mr. Parker to put us into the closed session.